Welcome to the Netreo user group get-together. I'm Lori Steinmetz. I kind of a somewhat experienced network management subject matter expert. I have a track history that goes back for years, and I've done a lot of work with Netreo over the years. And as well as being recognized, I actually created Netreo's partner training program. I helped to deliver it and helped in its growth and success of the organization. So currently, I'm engaged in some of the fun projects, which is the Netreo Health Check, which is what we're talking about today, as well as integration of Netreo with Microsoft Power BI for enhanced monitoring analytics. So how did this come to be? Basically, after years of working with clients, I saw that management didn't understand the Netreo install or how it was supposed to function. Those supporting Netreo were so busy dealing with critical issues, they really didn't have time to do support of Netreo itself. And therefore, the Netreo install began to drift a bit and move away from the initial setup and began to miss some critical issues. If this sounds like you, you probably fell into this. So the client staff only knew specific aspects of Netreo, meaning you use certain items from an administrator's point of view on a regular basis. And some of the other pieces and components of Netreo just fell by the wayside, and you forgot that they were even there as a functional tool to use. So you didn't have potentially a daily, weekly, monthly Netreo routine. Newly discovered devices were not being learned properly or categorized correctly. And then the implementation initially may not have been best practice. So you may have had someone install it for you, and then you began to modify it to meet the specific needs of your organization. And that kind of took it out of the compliance of being best practice. And sometimes this occurred over time. So the health check reviews deployment of your Netreo instance in its current state, looking back the last 90 days. So we'll have an executive summary, the analysis, and recommendations, not providing a step-by-step on guidance of how to resolve it, but rather bulleted recommendations that are high level. The audit reviews logon data. Now, this is pretty important. As a Netreo user, admin, super admin, I would look at, I want to know about failed logins. I want to know about the top users over time. And I'd love to see that in some form of graphical format. Well, we provide that as part of this report. Again, looking back 90 days and providing the graphics, which you'll see later. We look at devices that are no longer polling within Netreo itself. So you're looking at categories and sites, workflows, which are strategic groups for those of you who are older Netreo individuals. And then there's validated and not validated devices. How is the health check audit performed? There's Python-based system, which generates about 75 plus files. It accesses the web UI, not the Netreo backend. There's a Excel preprocessor that generates graphs and images and kind of preprocesses some of the data for the Word import. And then for Word, we import and process the Excel and Python generated files into the system. And then it's reviewed by a Netreo expert in the field. If you can't run Python-based system, or you're nervous about running Python-based system, we do have an exe-based file, which you can run on any Windows-based system. and this too will do the generation for you. It'll ask for a username, password, and the URL. So what's the executive summary actually look like? In your top right, you can see that there's a health check that rates you in key areas and how well you're doing. If you've done this multiple years in a row, or say you've done it every 6 months, then you'll have the below chart referencing how well you're doing, as well as where you're moving into the future. We look at things like licensing and how soon is the licensing up. There will be recommendations that are very high level for the executive and lists out basically the most critical recommendations that we're making. And we talk about remediation internally versus using external resources like a consultant. In the areas reviewed, this is an example of what are some of the topics that we cover. We have this right after the executive summary, so you know the areas that we've touched on and the things that we're actually reviewing. This varies based on a SaaS versus an on-prem instance, partially due to the fact that the on-prem systems has way more system diagnostic information than does the SaaS-based model. So under the recommendations, we have device groupings, categories of not monitored devices, and we show counts of devices that are not currently being monitored. We list sites and business workflows that have 0 devices in them and question maybe why you might have a blank site. Devices not managed or failed management, devices partially managed, devices not categorized properly, and disabled devices. So in the top right corner here of the graphic, you will see that all of the devices here are categorized as new devices. That means that somehow the category has not been applied correctly or automatically. And that may be an investigation you might want to go through, because typically new devices don't have all of the template capabilities applied to them that maybe a router might or a firewall might. Unlock thresholds. So this is an area of extreme importance. Typically, any installation, you would never unlock a threshold from a template to apply to a device. If you were to do that, and there are very rare cases, you might have a couple of these, maybe 2 or 3 overall in your deployment of Netreo. If you have any quantity or number higher than that, you're not using templates correctly, or you need management to help you out, support the template concept. Baseline templates, basically we review the template baseline report for templates that are generating extremely high numbers of alerts. And then we list those in order so that you can review the template. Might be something like bandwidth is hitting 95% consistently on a site that is, I don't know, generating 10 alerts a day. You may want to change that for the site, or you may want to change the template so that it's not generating all of these alerts based on high bandwidth utilization. We're also looking at service engines and what's going on with them. Security. So here's a great example of failed logons, which potentially is a security risk. Certainly with PAM in this instance, we're looking at 299 failed attempts. To me, this looks like somebody's attempting to hack into your system. Julie, who has 29 failed attempts in 90 days, by the way, may not be having a good day. So we may need to help Julie understand where her challenges are when she's trying to log into Netreo. That could require training. There could be a variety of reasons going on. It could also be an attempt by an outsider to gain access into the Netreo system. We review vCenter devices. So failed credentials. vCenter devices are a little unique within Netreo. You can't discover them automatically. They have to be manually entered, and there's a very specific approach to setting them up. Once they're set, they work like a charm. But if you've done an auto discover of a vCenter device, it now becomes a challenge. We also review flow exporters and whether or not they're active anymore or not. WebArt, email, 365, these are all things we're looking at, and we're looking at the performance of each of these and any abnormalities. Configuration retrieval. This is huge for your routers, switches, firewalls, things of that nature. Anything collecting a configuration. If you're not collecting it, it could be that a firewall rule has come up, that someone has changed the login for the device for Netreo, and so that needs to be updated or fixed. Configuration compliance reviews. If you've used this feature functionality, there's a rule and a template that gets applied and how many times it's actually failed. So we'll review the counts if you have configuration compliance enabled and which ones of these are being overused or shouldn't be tracking that kind of account. Parenting is critical to reduce alert fatigue. Here, you're looking at failures and the causes associated with the failure. So here's a bunch of devices. There are other devices interface polling only. Those haven't been learned correctly, so they're definitely having challenges with the type of device that it is. It's also inactive at this point. A bunch of ping-only devices have shown up, and they're also inactive. These are things we're reviewing in order to look at what's going on with the device. As far as parenting goes, root cause analysis is based on correct parent-child relationships. So you need to make sure that those are done correctly. Incidents and problems. So minimizing over-alerting by only alerting on actionable items. I know this has been a thing that Netreo talks about a ton. And really, from the perspective of the support individual, you should only be alerting for items that are going to wake you up and get you out of bed to go fix. Management typically says, I want it to alert on everything. And we'll discuss that in the next slide. So we're looking at how long has something been open, how many days it's been open, and this will be critical at some point for you to resolve the issue, change the issue, remove the device, update the device, whatever the approach is to resolve that alert. The problem list is how many times something has occurred over time. So here we're looking at threshold round trip latency for Dallas is triggered 2,460 times in a month. This seems a little high to me, and so I might consider looking at both the Dallas, the Houston, Houston windows. All of those seem to be very high occurrences for threshold settings for round trip. So I might investigate my templates associated with this. So an example of Superman Industries, the incidents to staffing model. So Superman Industries has a total active incidents in a day, 24-hour period, of 510 incidents. 5 minutes to review an incident, and that typically is the industry average resolution time. One person working 8-hour day with a 1-hour lunch. I know you guys don't get an hour, and you probably don't get lunch. Will take 6 days to review 1 day of active incidents, meaning one person could never look at 510 incidents if it takes 5 minutes to review. And in fact, if it took half an hour to investigate and resolve the issue, that hasn't been taken into account here. We're only looking at 5 minutes to review an incident. So that one person will fall behind every single day if you're alerting on everything. Or you're going to need 6 staff members to review 1 day of active incidents. So what's your average incident count per day? And how many critical incidents have you missed due to it being buried inside of all the other alerts that have occurred for that day? And this is a great component within the report that you can use to get more staffing or to change your templates so that you have a lower active incident rate. And this is legitimate enough that you can use it for management and they understand what's going on with it. Netreo and Microsoft. I have one quick slide here. It basically shows Power BI, the add-on. On the right, you'll see user logons by month. That's at the top. Slow poll devices by site, and then hosts up versus hosts down. And you can scroll that component up and down. The list of the number of devices in a category, so you can see device count based on your categories. And the larger the size, obviously, the more devices you have within the category. And finally, you have the total number of devices found within the trio and how many are down. This currently uses Python scripts to integrate data. It interfaces with the Netreo UI, not the backend databases. There are, at the moment, 20 different data pools, so 20 different little Python scripts, 10 and still growing pages or tabs within Power BI itself. You can use this as a template to gather your own data or not. Use what's already here. The Power BI desktop is a free Microsoft app, so you can actually load this up, run it on your desktop, and then do screen captures for the graphics and send that off to, or put it into a report, send it off to your management team, whichever way you wanted to approach that. Or I know that Power BI, through Microsoft 365 E5, or maybe that's ES, many enterprise customers use this, and it's already included, and therefore this can be a real-time scenario for generating graphics within the Netreo instance that you use. So thank you for listening, and if you have any questions at all on any of the topics that I've covered, you can feel free to contact me at this email address here. I am retired, so I don't tend to be a 24/7 waiting for email to come in. It may take me a day until I get back to you, but I'll be happy to help answer any questions that you might have. Thank you, and have yourself an awesome day.